Shalom and welcome everyone to a special live edition of Pearls of the Torah, live from Jerusalem in the Holy Land. And today we're going to look at our Parashat Bo, in a little bit of an interesting light. I'm at a very special location in Jerusalem, and it's a location where we filmed one of the recent courses for Kosher Pastor. It is the location of the tomb of King David. Just to my left, to your right, is where people go in and pray, and it's a tremendous memorial that is very popular around here. Just around the corner is the traditional Christian site of the Last Supper's upper room. Now, we're not sure if that's the exact spot, but that, according to Christian tradition, that's where it is. So there's a lot of interesting things right around this very tight space inside the old city. This week in the Torah portion, something jumped out at me from the sages, and that was this. In Exodus 10:10, Pharaoh says to Moses that I see evil before you. I see evil coming for you, in front of you, in your future. That's what Pharaoh said he saw. Now, according to the sages of Israel, he had consulted his astrological experts, his stargazers, as it were, his astronomers, and they had said that there was a star that was rising, and that star's name was evil. And so they believed that that star represented blood and slaughter. So when Pharaoh's astrologers looked out and saw this star rising that they called evil, which meant blood, Pharaoh interpreted that as there was nothing but blood and destruction ahead of you. Well, of course, we can look in our lives and say that our enemies, or our ultimate enemy, Hasatan, will come against us sometimes and try to convince us that bad things are on the way, that evil is around the corner. Now, in a way, this is true. I mean, this is what God said after the original man and woman were cast out of the garden, as he was talking with the brothers there. The sin is crouching at your door. Yeshua himself said this at the Last Supper when he said that Satan has desired to have you, to sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you. So we do have this sense that sometimes it's almost like evil forces are out to get us, or are crouching at the door, so to speak. But we also have to realize that we have hope. You see, Pharaoh saw this blood in the future. It's very interesting that I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story where it's not that God changes that star was there. It's not even that he changes that blood was in their future. He changes the meaning of what that blood represents. And that's what I think is so key here. That sometimes when the enemy says, oh, this is coming for you, or this is around the corner, or you have those bad negative thoughts in your mind about what's coming around the corner. Listen, we've got to remember that even if the enemy plans something evil, that God can work it for good. This is exactly what we saw in the story of Joseph with his brothers. Joseph is not angry with his brothers, and he tells themselves not to be angry with themselves or each other, because although they meant harm for Joseph, although they meant evil for Joseph, God had a plan that was going to work that out for good and for the saving of many lives. So let's think about that for a second. Even when bad things do happen, even when we don't think they may happen somewhere out there in the future, even when they do happen, we have to remember that we have a God that can change those things, that he can change the meaning of those things. He is the author of everything, and so he's the one in control. He's the one in charge. So it's interesting that Joseph's brothers meant to do something evil, meant to do something to harm him, but God turned it around for not only him, but for thousands and thousands of people, and even for his own brothers, even for his own family that had done this to him. So let's go back to Pharaoh's vision of his astronomers about them seeing the star rise, and them saying that this star was called evil, and that blood was in their future. Well, guess what? Blood was in their future. But if you'll remember, when God was going to slaughter the people because of the sin of the golden calf, Moses interceded for the people, and he said, why should the nations say of you, why should the Egyptians say of you that you let them go, but then you went out for their blood, you destroyed them? What would that say about your word, Lord? And so this is a very interesting thing. Probably Pharaoh's astronomers and probably everyone that believed them thought that God would destroy the people, or they would maybe destroy each other, and that was the blood. But God completely changed the meaning. So in Exodus 10:10, this is where it is told to them that their astronomers have seen the blood. But let me read this to you. This is a very interesting passage from our sages. See, there is evil before you. That's what it said in chapter 10, verse 10. So Moses, in his prayer, let me just read it exactly to you. This is from Exodus 32:12. Why should the Egyptians speak evil and say, he brought them forth in evil? The Egyptians will say, indeed, we have already said, see, there is evil before you. Hence, God bethought himself concerning the evil. This is very interesting. Then God changed the meaning of the blood. Listen to what Rashi says here, because this is so important. In Joshua 5:8, when they go into the land, God says, this day I have removed from you the reproach of the Egyptians. Well, what in the world could that mean? Well, what God has done, when he removed the reproach of the Egyptians, what he essentially did was say, okay, that star that rose, yes, it was a sign of blood. I'm not going to take that away. But I am going to change the meaning of the blood. And instead of the blood of the slaughter of the Israelites, the blood is now a sign of Brit Milah, the sign of the covenant of circumcision. And so God takes something that is evil and changes the meaning of it so it means a covenant, a lasting, forever covenant between him and his people. God didn't change what Pharaoh's astronomers saw. He changed the meaning of what they saw. And isn't that the most important thing? The most important thing isn't that they happen to foresee something. The most important thing is what it portended for the children of Israel. And in this case, when God changed the meaning, it changed everything. Another verse that I want you to think of when we think about things coming to us that are bad. And on this trip to Israel, we've had our fair share of bad things happen. But here's what we have to remember. My brother that I've mentioned to you before, who has leukemia, Pastor Josh McEwen, he loves John 16:33, an amazing verse that says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. I've often said that Yeshua could have said, take heart, I've overcome all that trouble, but he didn't. He said, take heart, I have overcome the world. The genius of this statement is it flips what we think we're going to hear. You're going to have trouble. Don't worry. I've conquered the trouble. No. In this world, you will have trouble, and I have overcome the world. This is our God. This is what our God does for us. It's absolutely amazing. Even when our enemies say that there's going to be bad things that happen, even if there's something on the horizon, even if it's being sold into slavery by your own family, God is going to turn that around and work it for good and for the saving of many lives. May his name be praised. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Moreh Matan with Kosher Pastor and Yeshiva Shuvu. I pray that this shiur has been a blessing to you as we are standing outside of the tomb of David HaMelech. Allow his heart to be yours. Pour out your heart honestly and earnestly to the Lord in songs, in hymns, in cries of lament. Cry out to the Lord, and he will change the meaning of what's coming to you. God bless you. Kol Tuv.